Hello and welcome to New Wave's IT video blog post for June 2010. I'm Kathlika Thomas, the chief contributor to New Wave's IT project blog, and thanks for joining me for this month's video entry. Our topic today is tips on outsourcing development. Following the trend of larger companies, small business owners are outsourcing a range of services from HR to finance and accounting to customer services. The best outsourcing and consulting firms can do everything an internal IT department does for big firms. Plan and configure your IT network, maintain operations, provide help desk services, provide training and orientation services for your new workers, and even help you move from one office to another if you need to. Here are a few tips on outsourcing your small business's IT needs to help ensure a smooth process when retaining help from an outsourced team. Tip number 1. Clearly define the scope and schedule for your project. Trust me, choosing an outsourcing team will be very difficult if defining the work that you need done is not taken into consideration first. Will you be outsourcing the creation of a new e-commerce system, an accounting or billing program, or a new online recruiting system? Your needs will play a huge role in detecting the type of outsourcing firm that you choose based upon their own experience. Giving vendors as much information as you can about what you need delivered and how you need the work done will help them give you a proper estimate of time and cost, important information that you need to make a smart decision about how you'll allocate your project dollars. Clearly identify your scheduling constraints to put some parameters around how long it would take to develop the final product from start to finish. For example, if producing or upgrading your accounting system, you may want all work complete before the start of a new fiscal year. This might be a non-negotiable requirement that could automatically rule out possible vendors and save you analysis time in the end during the RFP process. Tip number 2. Evaluate a service provider as you would a prospective employee. One point that I advocate: when you're evaluating proposals from service providers, don't be afraid to ask questions. Just like hiring a full-time employee, consider your service provider's portfolio of experience. Don't ignore any concerns you have about apparent gaps. If you have any concerns about a vendor's specific capabilities, voice your concerns. Don't just cross your fingers and hope for the best. Ideally, the service provider you select will have specific experience with the type of project that you're undertaking. You don't want to be somebody's guinea pig. This is especially crucial when outsourcing complex technical projects such as software development. Though it might be tempting, never select a vendor based solely on price. With a salaried employee, the one with the skill set that is least developed is the one that often commands the least pay. Keep that in mind, realizing that many experienced buyers almost always recommend discarding the highest priced and the lowest priced bids. Choose a vendor that offers a balance of value and quality. Finally, taking into consideration a good cultural fit between the hired vendor and your organization is often forgotten. Assessing for cultural fit helps ensure the project team's morale and satisfaction overall, which leads to better performance and productivity. Tip number 3, start small. Start with a project that's relatively small and simple in scope to give you a better idea of the provider's style and capabilities. When engaging with a service provider for the first time, start with a project that's relatively small and simple in scope. This will give you a better idea of the provider's style and capabilities before you entrust a mission-critical project to them. Don't sign a 5-year contract before testing performance and the relationship. Move slowly and commit gradually. To further ensure your level of comfort and satisfaction with the vendor, appoint one or more staff employees to act as liaisons. Consider entrusting these ones to serve as an in-house manager to oversee the contracted resources. The liaisons should help the outsourced team stay true to your primary needs, as well as maintain a proper report of their performance without encroaching on their ability to work. Another task of these liaisons is to prevent unnecessary bells and whistles, development that can result in an extended timeline and an inflated budget. Tip number 4. Tie payment to clearly defined project milestones. Just as you should be clear about project scope, make sure that you define a work plan for your outsourced project with clearly defined milestones. Having scheduled checkpoints where you review the status of the project as it works toward completion is an easy way to ensure that you meet your final deadline and that the final product meets your standards. Tie the vendor's payment to these milestones. A good guidance for IT and software development projects is to pay no more than 20 to 30% of the total project price upfront, with the rest of the payments awarded based on the completion of 3 or 4 milestones. Keep in mind too that during the course of a service engagement, the scope of the project, deliverables, or even the agreed upon price may change. Make sure that you have a definite change management plan and that you clearly communicate and document schedule, scope, or payment changes to your service provider and get confirmation from them in writing that they understand and agree to the changes. Save all change management communications. Tip number 5, don't forget about post-project support. For technology projects, it's a good idea to specify a warranty or a support clause so that you're assured of some amount of continuing support from the vendor after the project is complete. It's much easier to negotiate a support clause before the service provider begins work rather than after the completion of the project. Specifying some amount of free support or negotiating discounted prices for future modifications can save you time, money, and headaches later on. Let's recap. First, when deciding to outsource a project, make sure you define all of your business needs up front. Second, evaluate prospective service providers as you would a new employee. Make sure that experience, cost, and cultural fit are all appropriate. Tip number 3, start with small engagements first until you get comfortable with a vendor and the end-to-end outsourcing process. 4, tie payment of service fees to the completion of tasks throughout the project lifecycle. And finally, remember to include post-go-live support in the statement of work and outsourcing contracts. We hope these tips were useful to you and thank you for joining us for this video blog post. Many similar tips can be found at entrepreneurs.com and other online small business magazines. Be sure to stay up to date with New Wave's IT project blog and leave your comments on our blog site at www.newwave-tech.com/IT-project-blog and follow us on Twitter. Thanks again for joining.